Thank you, Cristina Pato. That was a spectacular opening for a spectacular night. And thank you all for being here. Welcome to the 26th annual Nancy Hanks Lecture on Arts and Public Policy. 26 years. I'm Bob Lynch, President and CEO of Americans for the Arts, and I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight here at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. We have another full house tonight, a full house crowd this year. There are 2,400 people in the audience and many, many more watching on our Americans for the Arts YouTube site as we live stream for the first time with Google. And that includes my mom up in Massachusetts. So that's for Mom, right? We thank all of you for being here with us this evening. Now, we have a very special evening ahead of us with one of the world's great artists, Yo-Yo Ma, as our speaker. But first, I'd like to take a moment to talk about a couple of other special events happening over the next 2 days. Tomorrow is National Arts Advocacy Day. Hundreds of you from all across the country will walk the halls of Congress to meet with your representatives and senators and to make the case for federal support for the arts and for arts education. In the shadow of sequestration, we must make our voices heard more loudly than ever. The arts matter. They are crucial for every person in the country. At Americans for the Arts and in our advocacy, we are focusing on engaging local arts agencies, advancing arts education, and finding big tent ways to connect broader issues and problem-solving areas, such as expanded diversity, arts and healing, cultural diplomacy, commerce, cultural tourism, and community development through the arts. All of these as both national connections, like we're doing here, but very importantly, as local priorities as well. On Wednesday, we will be holding the second National Summit on Arts, Health, and Well-Being across the military continuum to further our partnership with Walter Reed Medical Center in support of the many veterans returning home. There we will gather more than 200 military, arts, health, nonprofit leaders and practitioners to contribute ideas, highlight bright spots, and join the national effort to support the health and well-being of service members, veterans, their families, and the greater community that supports them. We're honored to have with us some special guests, and one of them is Ambassador Gene Kennedy Smith, who has been so helpful on this particular kind of work and with our work at Walter Reed. Also, Commander Moira McGuire from the Sea Service Warrior Clinic at Walter Reed is here with us this evening. Our work with our nation's armed forces is just one way we're mobilizing the arts in our communities to reach the goal, our vision, of all of the arts for all of the people. This year, it's critically important to help decision makers understand that the power of the arts in building better communities and better lives is the great power of the arts. And I hope tonight inspires you to do just that. I also hope that all of you who tweet out there will share your experiences tonight with and Arts Advocacy Day tomorrow and use the hashtag AAD2013 to keep the rest of the country up to date on our advocacy activities here. We're very grateful to Google for their enthusiastic collaboration. In addition to live streaming tonight, this year for the first time we will also have a live Google Hangout tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. following the breakfast, and to continue the conversation with Yo-Yo Ma and several other leaders in arts education. You can find out how to watch the Hangout and submit questions to be answered on air tomorrow morning at americansforthearts.org/AAD. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the staff of Americans for the Arts, I want to thank all of the 87 national organizations that have co-sponsored Arts Advocacy Day and endorsed a national united arts policy platform, all of us together united on what we're going to Congress for. And I would like to have all those 87 organizational representatives please stand so that they could be recognized. Would you all please stand? I also want to thank the hundreds of grassroots Arts Advocacy Day registrants who have come from across the country to help make this week a success. And now it's only appropriate to pause for a moment to acknowledge that a longtime pioneer in arts advocacy, a woman named Anne Murphy of the former American Arts Alliance, passed away last week. We owe her a debt of gratitude. She was there early, she was there often for what she did, the hard work of the first opening of many of the legislative doors that we now walk through on Capitol Hill. And she began her work in D.C., very appropriately to this lecture, working with Nancy Hanks. A round of applause for Anne Murphy. You know, Anne would have been thrilled to know that our lecturer tonight, musician Yo-Yo Ma, who she loved, will also be with us on Capitol Hill tomorrow. What a generous guy, right alongside other folks, including former Guns N' Roses drummer and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Matt Sorum. So how's that? That's a great musical duo to knock the socks off of Congress tomorrow. Also in the audience tonight, we have Americans for the Arts Artist Committee members, actress Fran Drescher, dancer, choreographer Liz Lerman, as well as artists who have been great help to us. Musicians Aaron and Afa Dworkin and Liz Murphy, famed photographer Susan Mazelis, storyteller John Spellman, actress Nancy Stevens, our nation's poet laureate Natasha Trethewey, and dancers Diane Brace, Heather Watts, and Damian Wetzel, who's also our great colleague and partner from the Aspen Institute. I thank all of those artists. We also have a number of special guests in the audience tonight, including esteemed members of Congress, like the indefatigable Louise Slaughter, serving her up there. Serving her 14th term in Congress, 14 terms, Congresswoman Slaughter has been the co-chair of the Congressional Arts Caucus since its inception and is our lead champion on the Hill, making sure that the arts have a voice at the table. And also with us, our strong congressional partners, Congressman Rush Holt from New Jersey, Congressman Leonard Lance, who is also from New Jersey, and the new Republican co-chair of our Congressional Arts Caucus. Welcome to Congressman Lance. And our good friend, Massachusetts State Senator, Majority Leader Stan Rosenberg, who has helped a lot of you. I also want to mention that with us is NEA Acting Chairman Joan Shigagawa, here with colleagues Jamie Bennett, Bill O'Brien, Michael Kaloran, and many others. President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities co-chair George Stevens Jr. and Executive Director Rachel Goslins have joined us, along with White House Social Secretary Jeremy Bernard, and Tom Cochran, CEO, and Tom McClyman with the United States Conference of Mayors, one of our great partners, former Federal Reserve Board Chairman, and more importantly, a noted jazz clarinetist and saxophonist, and former Juilliard student, Alan Greenspan, here with his wife, television journalist Andrea Mitchell. And I'd like to recognize the members of the Americans for the Arts Board that helps me and our staff do this work with you, and I appreciate them every day. Would you please stand, the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors? And so finally, I'd like to thank our partners and sponsors, Nancy Stevens and Mick Rosenthal of the Rosenthal Family Foundation and the late, great Hinda Rosenthal, who started the family's tradition of support and engagement with the Hanks Lecture over a decade ago. Alan Blevins, Stephanie Madden, Sandy Romano, and the team at Bank of America. All of our friends at Ovation, Charles Seegers, Ken Solomon, Chad Gutstein, Sonia Tower, Brad Samuels, and their colleagues. And special thanks to the Kennedy Center. We have partnered with them on this lecture for 20 years. And so we thank all of you. Your partnership, all of you, and the extraordinary generosity have played a key role in making this evening and our work over these 2 days possible, and I thank you. I know, thank you. From the little snippets I've heard already, I know that you'll be inspired by the lecture this evening. And if you want to be part of our work, and there are many ways to do that, visit us online at americansforthearts.org, and for free, join our Arts Action Fund so that we can communicate to you ongoing about advocacy and legislative issues. Tonight, it will be, in a moment, our honor to be able to welcome critically acclaimed cellist, Grammy Award winner, and arts education activist Yo-Yo Ma as this year's Nancy Hanks Lecturer on the Arts and Public Policy. I want to personally thank Frank Hotzel, former chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts, and Richard Curran, Smithsonian Undersecretary for Culture, Art, and History, for helping make this evening possible. And now, to formally introduce Yo-Yo Ma, I am very pleased to welcome to the stage our friend Victoria Reggie Kennedy. I had the distinct honor of working closely with Mrs. Kennedy's late husband, Senator Ted Kennedy, who was a stalwart champion of the arts and arts education in this country and from my home state of Massachusetts. Massachusetts is in the house, I can hear that. He actually joined us here on this stage to introduce Doris Kearns Goodwin and the Martha Graham Dance Company a few years ago. Victoria Reggie Kennedy is the president of the board and co-founder of the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate in Boston, a nonpartisan organization created to educate the public about the unique role of the United States Senate in our democracy. Mrs. Kennedy is a trustee of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, where she chairs its education committee. She has been honored as a distinguished professor and mentor at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and is a member of the Board of Overseers of the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And in addition to her legal career, her board service, and her nonprofit leadership roles, she has served in key strategic and political roles on issues ranging from health and education to labor, especially as those issues affect women and children. Mrs. Kennedy was actively involved in the passage of the Affordable Care Act of 2010 and stood at President Obama's side at the signing of that bill into law. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage Victoria Reggie Kennedy.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. What a pleasure it is to be here tonight with Bob Lynch and all of you for the 26th annual Nancy Hanks Lecture on Arts and Public Policy. And what an honor it is for me to have this opportunity to introduce tonight's lecturer, a great American treasure, my dear friend, the inspiring, talented, and magnificent Yo-Yo Ma. Yo-Yo Ma's singular musical talent is matched only by his infectious warmth, humility, and overarching desire to give back to his community and indeed to the world. I basically inherited my friendship with Yo-Yo through my late husband, Senator Edward Kennedy. Teddy not only loved Yo-Yo's music, but he was also inspired by Yo-Yo's dedication to public service, and he told him so. And in my book, there's no higher praise than that. When I first met Yo-Yo shortly after Teddy and I married in 1992, he gave me something that is still one of my most prized possessions, a signed copy of his CD Hush with Bobby McFerrin. I knew then that Yo-Yo was an extraordinarily open musician who would not be pigeonholed into one genre, and I also knew then that he and I would be friends for life. We all know Yo-Yo's remarkable story. A child prodigy who played the cello for Presidents Eisenhower and Kennedy before his 8th birthday. And he played for 6 more presidents after that. But for me, it's his common touch and outreach to everyday people that has been the most striking. A Harvard classmate of his told me that Yo-Yo used to have spontaneous concerts in Harvard Yard with young musicians, mentoring and encouraging them while opening the eyes and the ears of his fellow students. I can imagine that scene because I've seen it myself. In 2002, I invited Yo-Yo and his wife Jill to be guests at a 70th birthday party I was giving Teddy at the Kennedy Library in Boston. Yo-Yo called to accept and asked, "Can I bring my cello?" Oh my, what a birthday gift. Yo-Yo's music transformed that celebration into an otherworldly experience. No one there that night will ever forget it. Now imagine this scene. In 2011, Yo-Yo was a Kennedy Center honoree, a truly deserved recognition. On the evening of the Honors Gala, prior to coming here to the Kennedy Center, President and Mrs. Obama hosted a reception at the White House for the honorees and some guests. The United States Marine Band was playing in the entrance hall as everyone walked into the party at the White House. People were milling around, and then suddenly I noticed a quiet spreading through the crowd. And a semicircle of ball gowns and black ties began to form, and people tiptoed to see and cocked their ears to hear. And then I saw our honoree, Yo-Yo Ma, playing the cello alongside a young Marine cellist. That Marine will never forget, as long as she lives, that she played the cello with the great Yo-Yo Ma. And yet again, no one there that night will ever forget it either. But that is always the story of Yo-Yo Ma. Whether it's his incredible work with the Silk Road Project, which has been creating cultural bridges between people for 15 years, or his work with the Chicago Symphony to create a citizen musician initiative, Yo-Yo uses music to bridge gulfs between people and to create and inspire a sense of community. Public service through music. What an achievement. He's won every major arts award imaginable, including 15 Grammy Awards, and he's been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. When we hear and watch him play later this evening, we will certainly understand why. Inscribed on the walls of this building are these words of President Kennedy. There is a connection, hard to explain logically, but easy to feel, between achievement in public life and progress in the arts. The age of Pericles was also the age of Phidias. The age of Lorenzo de' Medici was also the age of Leonardo da Vinci. The age of Elizabeth, also the age of Shakespeare. And the new frontier for which I campaign in public life can also be a new frontier for American art. I believe we can add to that impressive litany that from the age of the new frontier until, and no doubt beyond, the age of Barack Obama, this is also the age of Yo-Yo Ma. How lucky we are to live in his time, and how fitting it is that we are here with him tonight in this cultural center that bears President Kennedy's name and honors his commitment to the arts and to excellence. It is my pleasure to introduce him now. Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Yo-Yo Ma. You're the best.
You're so sweet.
We're supposed to take a picture.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You should be in the
No,
middle.
you should be in the
No,
middle.
you should be in the middle.
Are you
You
kidding?
should be.
You're the flower. First of all, I think she said everything I was planning on saying tonight. And secondly, I felt I was dead. But I do think you're all here. So, since Vicky is walking to her seat, I will say some things to her that she won't hear. Vicky, I cannot tell you how meaningful it is that you made this introduction tonight. It is fitting, since many years ago, it was indeed at the Kennedy Library in Boston that your late husband, our great senator from Massachusetts, Ted Kennedy, first put into my mind the idea of a musician doing public service. I don't think I was doing public service then, but it was he that put the idea in my mind, and I've been thinking about it ever since. And so tonight we are on this stage at the Kennedy Center, our nation's performing arts center, and Vicky, you are a trustee. So thank you for your graciousness, your generosity, and your highly exaggerated kind words. I'm deeply honored to be here tonight to present the annual Nancy Hanks Lecture, reporting on the state of the arts, culture, and humanities, to all of you, engaged citizens who work in the arts, in policy, advocates for an enlightened citizenry. I'd like to thank Bob Lynch and Americans for the Arts for doing the heavy lifting involved in hosting this event. And I'd like to extend a hearty welcome to all of you who have come to the Kennedy Center, as well as the viewers beyond the four walls of the concert hall watching the Google webcast. None of us exists in a vacuum. So before we discuss the state of the arts, culture, and humanities, let's first consider the world environment we are living in. That's what musicians are trained to do. This may seem contradictory at first, but musicians are trained to be attentive to the biggest possible picture, and at the same time, sensitive to the smallest detail. And that's what I hope to do with you all tonight. So, on the planetary scale, what do we have? We have recently reached a world population of over 7 billion people, speaking over 6,000 languages, spread out over 200 countries. Globally, we face issues of food security and diminishing natural resources, among a host of others. So how are we going to share our planet among so many people with so many competing interests? And what role can the arts, culture, and humanities play in finding solutions to this dilemma? On the domestic side, we are emerging from the Great Recession with significant debt vast unemployment, and shaky infrastructure. Moreover, two former secretaries of state, George Shultz and Condoleezza Rice, have declared that the state of our K-12 education system has now reached crisis proportions. And President Obama has spoken of our inability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes or look through someone else's eyes as an empathy deficit. The environment looks pretty grim, but it's not without hope. I think there are ways each one of us can contribute to a solution. So tonight, I'd like to look at three things. First, what lessons can we tease out from observing nature? Second, what can we learn from studying the human realm? And finally, what can the sciences and the arts teach all of us? I think the answers to these questions will help us develop the tools we need to tackle some of these seemingly intractable problems. And the answers will help me explain why I want to talk to you all about art for life's sake. One of the topics I've been reading about recently is what kind of workforce we need in the 21st century. What will our graduates need in order to succeed? The experts say we need 4 qualities in our students and in our workforce. They need to be collaborative, flexible, imaginative, innovative. Now, according to the 2012 IBM Global CEO study, collaboration is the #1 trait CEOs are seeking in their employees, with 75% of CEOs calling it critical. The Council on Competitiveness says those who learn to innovate will prosper in a global economy. The Center for Public Education trumpets creativity and intellectual flexibility as crucial competencies. Now, we know that our present educational system encourages knowledge acquisition and critical thinking. But what about these other qualities? How do we develop them? Let's take my favorite example of creativity from science. In ecology, the point where 2 ecosystems meet, such as the forest and the savanna, that point is called edge effect. In that transition zone, because of the influence the 2 ecological communities have on each other, you find the greatest diversity of life, as well as the greatest number of new life forms. So that's one way nature is creative. The edge effect is also something that has had an impact on my life. 3 events happened to me when I was 7 years old, all interrelated. These were personal edges that have contributed to my thinking and development and made me ask at every stage of my life, who am I and how do I fit in the world? The first event was immigration. You see, one thing I realized after my family moved from France to the United States is that you can't be in 2 places at once. Yet, I was stubborn enough to want to insist I could. Who willingly gives up friends, favorite foods, favorite landscapes, favorite comic books? I wanted life in Paris to continue, but I was also so excited to experience this new existence in New York. Wondering about life in parallel, contemplating similar experiences in different worlds, these thoughts required imagination. Call it stubbornness. Call it imagination. The ability to transcend physical, or in this case, geographical restrictions, is something that I have strived to understand all my life. The second event was meeting my hero, the great cellist Pablo Casals. This happened soon after I arrived in New York City. His musical phrasing had the strength and beauty of marble sculptures. I was mesmerized. But it was something he said that most influenced me. He said, "I am a human being first, a musician second, and a cellist third." Looking back, that may have planted the seeds of the title of tonight's talk, Art for Life's Sake. At the recommendation of Pablo Casals, the third event was one my sister and I participated in right here in Washington, D.C. Here is some archival video footage.
Here's a cultural image for you to ponder as you listen. A 7-year-old Chinese cellist playing old French music for his new American compatriots. Welcome Yo-Yo Ma and Yu Cheng Ma.
This was an event that was one of the first fundraisers for what would become the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Yes, just as Vicki said, you did see Presidents Eisenhower and Kennedy and Leonard Bernstein. I knew they were incredibly important people, and now I understand why, but when I was 7, who did I gravitate to? What stuck in my memory? Yep, it's Danny Kaye. Now, take a look at where his eyes are. He came down to my level in order to be an equal to the Toothless Wonder. He extended himself, met me at the crucial edge that divides adult from child, and he won my heart. Since then, I have subliminally internalized that gesture and that attitude, and today, I try to be mindful of this in everything I do, to meet people at eye level at the edge that divides one person from another. Now, I wonder, how might the edge effect work in the cultural realm? Well, let's ask my friends Lil Buck and Cristina Pato to demonstrate.
Hello, my dear.
Thank you, Lil Buck. Thank you, Cristina. Lil Buck, also known as Charles Riley. Isn't he extraordinary? His form of dance, called jookin, has been around for over 30 years, but it has remained underground at the edge for most of this time. Lil Buck is 24 years old, and for the last 10 years, he has spent as many as 10 hours a day practicing his passion. His great wish is to bring his dance form from the edge, from the borders, to the center of the dance world. Last year, Lil Buck toured with Madonna, and last week he performed 2 sold-out solo shows at Le Poisson Rouge in New York City to great critical acclaim. As you can see, he is making great strides toward his goal, and by the way, he comes from Memphis, Tennessee, which is also the place the choreography for this piece was developed for the Memphis Public Schools by the new ballet ensemble. Now, some of you realize that Cristina Pato, the pianist, is also Cristina Pato, the bagpipe or gaita player who ushered you in earlier. She hails from northern Spain in Galicia, where she is a rock star. Cristina is also a member of the Silk Road Ensemble, and she just released her first jazz CD called Migrations. One might say she's an artist who creates her own edge effect. And the edge effect also has broader implications. Sociologists tell us that societies are powered by 3 engines: politics, economics, and culture. We know the political engine gives us structure and is responsible for stability and security. The economic engine, through trade, puts food on the table and a roof over our heads. And the cultural engine encompasses who we are, how we feel, and the things that give our lives meaning. The currency of politics is the distribution of power. The currency of economics is the creation of wealth. Is there currency in culture? I think there is. It's trust. Now, for each of these engines, there's a fuel. Let's call it knowledge. Knowledge confers power and status in the political realm. The application of knowledge results in wealth creation in the economic sector. Knowledge in culture gives us perspective and the capacity for empathy and humility. My favorite version of a vibrant society has all 3 engines firing on all cylinders, and the populace is energized, fulfilled, and engaged. But sometimes, these engines have strong borders, so I want to suggest to you that societies run better when the engines are not only firing on all cylinders, but they also intersect. As in nature, creativity in human society happens at the intersections. The edge is where those of varied backgrounds come together in a zone of transition, a region of less structure, more diversity, and more possibility. And in a forthcoming from the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the CEO of Boeing, Jim McNerney, credits Americans' ability to live in between disciplines and cultures is one of the strongest competitive edges. So, what would it look like to work at the intersection of politics and culture? Let's go back to the title of tonight's talk, Art for Life's Sake. What do I mean by that? Do you remember when I said that musicians are taught to be attentive to the biggest possible picture and at the same time sensitive to the smallest detail? Please nod. Thank you. Well, another seemingly contradictory thing is that musicians spend years learning technique. But the point of art is always to transcend technique. That's when we get to meaning. We transcend technique in order to seek out the truths in our world in a way that gives meaning and sustenance to individuals and communities. That's art for life's sake. When I met the great American novelist William Styron over 30 years ago, he told me something I would never forget. He said, writers have a responsibility to wrestle with the most challenging problems of their time. I think the novels Confessions of Nat Turner and Sophie's Choice are examples of Styron responding to the needs he perceived. And now, I'd like to share with you a live performance, an example of a present-day artist responding to need. I met Arthur Bloom through my good friend, the cultural impresario, Damien Wetzel, who, by the way, also introduced me to Lil Buck. Arthur Bloom has developed an amazing program called MusiCorps, working with injured service members at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. We're going to perform Levon Helm's Wide River to Cross. Please welcome now the wonderful veteran musicians of MusiCorps and Arthur Bloom. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
There's a sorrow in the wind blowing down the road I've been. I can hear it cry while shadows steal the sun. But I cannot look back now. I've come too far to turn around, 'cause there's still a race ahead that I must run. I'm only halfway home. I've got to journey on to where I'll find the things that I have lost. I've come a long, long road. Still got some miles to go. I've got the wide river to cross. I have stumbled, I have strayed. You can trace the tracks I made all across the memories that my heart recalls. But I'm still a refugee. Won't you say a prayer for me? 'Cause sometimes even the strongest to journey on to where I'll find the things that I have lost. I've come a long, long road. Still got some miles to go. Got a wide river to cross. I've got a wide river to cross. I'm only halfway home. I've got to journey on to where I'll find the things that I have lost. I've come a long, long road. Still got some miles to go. I've got a wide river to cross. I've got a wide river to cross. I've got a wide river to cross.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand to Sergeant Rex Tharp, Corporal Marcus Dandrea, Lance Corporal Tim Donley, Specialist Nathan Kalwicki, Lance Corporal Josh Cawthorn, Greg Loman, and Arthur Bloom. Okay.
Wow. I find performing with my musical friends here so compelling and moving. Seeing them in action, hearing their songs, listening to their stories reveals the depth of their humanity. Because they have given all of themselves to our country, we need to give back everything that we can. here too, we see an edge effect. As music therapists know, by combining two things many people don't usually associate together, music and healthcare, Arthur has discovered a new path to healing for these veterans, and, as Arthur explains, this is real work, discipline, and rigor. You can see for yourselves the transformative power of the veterans' work in music when Lance Corporal Tim Donley, who sang so beautifully, says at age 21, he feels blessed to have found two great loves in his life. First, the Marines, now music. For me, Arthur Bloom is a great example of a citizen musician, one who practices art for life's sake, one who is engaged at the intersection of art and need. Now, I'd like to tell you how I first came to the idea of citizen musician. In 2006, I was working with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Silk Road Project, and cultural organizations all across Chicago on a year of programming called Silk Road Chicago. One day, my good friend Tim Knowles, the director of the University of Chicago's Urban Education Institute, showed me this front page headline from the Chicago Tribune. So, out of 100 boys entering 9th grade in the Chicago public schools, 6 will graduate from college by the time they're 25 years old. And if you're African American or Latino, your chances go down to 2.5 out of 100. I found that statistic devastating. I cannot be a proud citizen as long as this is true. I know I can't fix it, but I have to find some way to respond. So I'm thinking, what possible skills do I have that could be useful in addressing this need? Then came this aha moment when I realized that everything I practice in music, and this is true of all the performing arts, involves the very 4 qualities necessary for success in the workforce of the 21st century: collaboration, flexibility, imagination, innovation. So today, I'm working with 3 organizations to model the skills the 21st century demands. They are the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities, and the Silk Road Project. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra, under Ricardo Muti's leadership, practices citizen musicianship on tour and at home. They are deeply engaged in Chicago and as ambassadors through music in places as varied as an orphanage in St. Petersburg, Russia, and in Mexico City at the Teleton Children's Rehabilitation Center. They live life and practice art for life's sake. Back in their hometown, the CSO has worked closely with the Chicago Public Schools and the NGO Ingenuity Incorporated on the passage and now the implementation of the newly adopted Arts Education Plan. That plan makes the arts a core subject in K-12 education in our nation's 3rd largest school district for the first time ever. Turnaround schools are public schools that are in the lowest achieving 5% in their state. The President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities has adopted 8 turnaround schools. From Washington, D.C. to Lame Deer, Montana, these schools have become models for what extraordinary principals, teachers, teaching artists, and strategic arts programming can accomplish together. I want to share 3 examples. In 2 years, by infusing his school with the arts, the remarkable principal of Boston's own Orchard Gardens, Andrew Bott, turned the most failing school in Massachusetts to the school with the most gains in the state. Principal Patrick Pope at Savoy Elementary in Anacostia, D.C., took student engagement to a new level by adding regular arts classes, and just last month, overall scores in reading and math rose for the first time in 5 years. And attendance went up over 20% on a Northern Cheyenne reservation in Lame Deer, Montana, after teaching artist visits to the remote school emphasized building trust. At the Silk Road Project, we work to inspire passion-driven learning through arts integration. We have chosen to work with 6th graders because educators have found that unless students are highly engaged during their transition to junior high school, they will not graduate from high school. We've partnered with the Harvard Graduate School of Education to create an annual institute for teachers from all over the country who want to work collaboratively across disciplines to make their teaching memorable. And we're starting a program with the Harvard Business School to encourage undergraduates to focus their passion for culture and develop it entrepreneurially. We believe that by connecting performance, education, and entrepreneurship, we can encourage new models of making art for life's sake, for all of our sakes. And of course, we're not the only people doing this work, not by a long shot. There's more good news. Listen to this. When James Catterall looked at data from the National Educational Longitudinal Study for 25,000 students over 10 years, he found that arts-engaged, low-income students are more likely than their non-arts-engaged peers to have attended and done well in college, obtained employment with a future, volunteered in their communities, and participated in the political process by voting. Wow. Now, let me give you an example of what happens at the end of a year focused on passion-driven learning.
Night at the Caravanserai, Tales of Wonder, was a performance we all did celebrating Silk Road Connect, which is an arts integration program that the Silk Road Project has now begun in New York City middle schools. On stage that night, in Central Park, were, 250 sixth graders from the New York City public schools.
Are you ready to come up here and tell your story? Come on up. A god and a goddess got married, and they fell to earth, and that's how we have indigo?
Yes, Indigo was born.
What is your story about?
It's about rhythm.
Rhythm.
Yeah, rhythm. 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 Me and my friend was walking down the street, listening to this groovy beat. We headed to the park to play some ball. We ran around the corner and saw them all. Dancing.
Dancing.
Silk Road Connect's approach to teaching encourages students to become passionate learners and engaged global citizens.
So, from the video you can see how we're trying to help students develop the tools that will make them eager rather than fearful to meet the world they don't know. From this new perspective, they can see a bigger vista and know it is within their reach. By looking at a subject from the perspectives of different disciplines, students develop greater imagination. A disciplined imagination leads to experimentation, leads to innovation. Through collaborating and developing flexible thinking, going back and forth between their center and their edges, and finding a way to welcome change to make new ideas safe. There's so much talk recently about how the future of our country depends on teaching our children science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's known as STEM. Yet, the qualities crucial to success in the 21st century workforce will not come just from studying science, technology, engineering, and math, as important as those disciplines are. You may remember the Catterall study I mentioned earlier. It tells us that low-income students engaged in arts education are more likely to grow up to succeed in college, have meaningful careers, and be contributing members of their communities. And in the IBM study, 75% of CEOs tell us that collaboration, a skill performing artists practice every single day, is critical. Einstein said, "The greatest scientists are also artists as well." Now, here's an elegant way that another one of our great physicists looked at how beauty and science are not mutually exclusive.
I have a friend who's an artist, and he's sometimes taken a view which I don't agree with very well. He'll hold up a flower and say, "Look how beautiful it is." And he says, "You see, as I as an artist can see how beautiful this is, but you as a scientist, oh, take this all apart and it becomes dull thing." And I think that he's kind of nutty. First of all, although I may not be quite as refined aesthetically as he is, that I can appreciate the beauty of the flower. At the same time, I see much more about the flower than he sees. I mean, it's not just beauty at this dimension, there's also beauty at a smaller dimension. I could imagine the cells in there, also the processes, the complicated actions inside, which also have a beauty. The fact that the colors and the flower evolved in order to attract insects to pollinate it is interesting. It means that insects can see the color. It adds a question. Why is it aesthetic? All kinds of interesting questions which the science only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower. It only adds. I don't understand how it subtracts.
Thank you, Richard Feynman. I know many of you will agree. All the evidence points to the necessity of adding an A as in arts, culture, and humanities to science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM to STEAM. The arts, culture, and humanities give us perspective and the capacity for empathy and humility. In a world of 7 billion people in more than 200 countries, our problems will not be solved when we have a looming empathy deficit. We know that the best decision makers employ great critical thinking skills with a great capacity for empathy. New studies in neuroscience show that these two ways of thought follow two distinct neural pathways, and only one can be activated at any one time. So in order for people to make good decisions, they have to constantly be able to shift between critical thinking and empathetic thinking. And practicing those two modalities, oscillating between the two, one never excluding the other, is another way to practice going from the center to the edge, back and forth. Americans for the Arts has been a leader in the effort to turn STEM to STEAM, helping to form the Congressional STEAM Caucus, led by Representatives Suzanne Bonamici, Democrat from Oregon, and Aaron Schock, Republican from Illinois. So now, let us not forget, STEM without STEAM loses steam. But STEM to STEAM will power our country forward. To summarize, there are three big ideas I've shared with you tonight. One, societies are powered by three engines: politics, economics, and culture. A vibrant society exists when all three engines are firing and intersecting, resulting in a populace that is energized, engaged, and fulfilled. Two, our collective work in the arts is not just relevant, but essential to strengthening our culture and positively influencing society. Thus, art for life's sake. And three, the arts and arts integration are the way to foster the four critical skills necessary for our children to succeed in the 21st century workforce: collaboration, flexibility, imagination, innovation. So how do we make these ideas reality? I submit that each one of us can and will make a difference if we work at the edge, where creativity and innovation flourish. We work to integrate the arts into our educational process in order to prepare our kids for the future, and we work for something greater than ourselves. Thank you for listening to our music, and thank you for listening to my words. Now, I'd like to ask you to do something for me. You have in your programs a postcard that I hope you will fill out and return as you leave the concert hall this evening. I hope that you will write on the card what you write on the card and leave behind to share will be the spark for a conversation you will have together, not just tonight, but next week, next year, and over the next decade. I'd like to close now by playing for you a very special piece of music that encompasses many of the things we've talked about tonight. It's a saraband by Bach. Now, it's a piece that I've played over the years for friends' weddings, and sometimes, unfortunately, for their memorial services. It's a work that takes us to the very edge of human experience, where joy becomes one with sorrow, where awe and wonder are coupled with compassion and empathy. It feels like a perfect piece of music, and yet it is curiously, deliberately incomplete. Let me show you why. Now, it sounds complete when the piano is playing all 4 voices at once. But the cello cannot play all 4 at the same time. I have to focus on the melody or the bass. Now, the melody is like Feynman's flower. Being human, we are attracted to its beauty and naturally gravitate towards it. But the bass, the bass. That's the ground, the roots, our values. That's the life-giving force. That makes the flower bloom. Now, listen to the bass notes here. If I were to play all the voices, I can only hold on to this bass note for 1 second. But it needs to last many more than that. The same with the next one. And the next one. And the next one. Until it's time to bring the phrase to its completion. And now, without Cristina, I'm going to ask you to help me. First by listening, then by willing yourself to sustain in your ears the notes I cannot sustain. And in doing so, fulfilling Bach's idea that completion in this saraband can only be achieved through our combined efforts. And when we do so, we will have the chance for a brief moment to be in touch with the sublime.
Let's give Yo-Yo another round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yo-Yo, for an incredibly thoughtful and beautifully performed lecture. I am confident that this highly personal and aptly entitled presentation, Art for Life's Sake, will be remembered for many years to come. I'm Abel Lopez, and I'm the chairperson of the Board of Directors of Americans for the Arts. One of the reasons we will remember Yo-Yo's speech is because of the moving performances of Lil Buck, Cristina Pato, and Arthur Bloom, and the heroic members of the MusiCorps program. Please join me in also thanking these artists, as well as the incredible artists' education leadership, And also the incredible arts education leadership of our introducer tonight, Victoria Reggie Kennedy. I want to also thank all of our guests for joining us tonight here in the concert hall, and to those online who watch via the live web stream that Google provided for this event. And of course, we are so grateful to our venue host, the incomparable John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Yes, please. If you would like to watch tonight's event again, please visit the Americans for the Arts YouTube website. And also, a written copy of Yo-Yo's speech will also go live at the conclusion of this event on the Americans for the Arts website. And please, don't forget to fill out Yo-Yo's postcards located in the playbill. Staff will be collecting them in blue bags as you leave the hall. Finally, for those of you who would like the opportunity to mix and mingle with your friends and colleagues, the Kennedy Center will have food and beverages available for sale in front of the concert hall. We look forward to seeing you here again next year. Have a wonderful night and a safe trip home. Good night. Thank you.